Chuck, good morning. I know you got 6 hours of radio due today, so thanks for making some time for us, man.
And what's another 20?
Yeah, it's just talking college football. That's kind of like show prep,
Exactly. All right, so let's start with the Arkansas-Georgia game, Chuck. Just kind of your overall thoughts on how the Arkansas fans should have reacted to the 37-10 loss to the Georgia Bulldogs on Saturday.
Despite what some of the scoreboard optics look like at halftime and even, getting into the third quarter, Arkansas never had anything going offensively. I think the tally of their possessions, I think it was 16 possessions, 8 free and outs, 4 turnovers, 2 scores. They had a regular old drive where you get a few first downs and a punt. They did that once, and then they had a loss on downs, which if you want to count that as a turnover, you can do that as well. I mean, it didn't take very long to get through 16 possessions to describe them there. No offensive consistency. And, again, they don't have SEC players on the offensive line. They got SEC players at running back and wide receiver, and we've seen Felipe Franks do good things before, particularly on the deep pass. Felipe's always been pretty good taking shots deep. But it looked like a bunch of pieces parts, that just were kind of jammed together and no cohesiveness, no real drives on the day. And I think that's part of what Arkansas is going to be staring at. Arkansas fans are going to be staring at most of this year. If you don't block folks up front, I mean, everything else gets, goes sideways on you. And that's something that the Hogs have been dealing with for probably 3 or 4 years, one of the worst offensive lines in America.
Chuck, you mentioned the SEC players at both running back and wide receiver. I know that a lot of headlines were comparing George Pickens and Treylon Burks, and I know a lot of Georgia fans were frustrated. It's like, why is George Pickens in the same category as Treylon Burks? George is way better. Did Treylon Burks show the SEC, Georgia fans, and others any something on Saturday that you think can put him in that elite wide receiver SEC category?
Oh, absolutely. If you're talking as far as, accumulating some stats, some numbers, et cetera, absolutely Treylon Burks can do that. I like Trey Knox as much, and he only had the one grab the other day. But we know when Morris brought in his talent, it was concentrated at wide receiver. He did a really good job bringing in talented, recruits at that position and really kind of, layer in a couple of classes, bringing in talent there. I don't know what it's going to equal. I know that it gives you a chance to win your battle on the outside. And Treylon Burks, I mean, is he Jalen Waddle? Well, probably not, because he doesn't have the same quality quarterback or running game to occupy the secondary, et cetera. He won't have a season like that. But, yeah, Treylon Burks, he's absolutely SEC caliber, no doubt about that.
Should Arkansas fans be more excited about the potential of their defense, or Georgia fans be more concerned about the state of their offense?
It would be Georgia in the offense, because if we're just going to be, we all live in the adult world here. Arkansas, that wasn't supposed to be a competitive thing the other day. It really wasn't. And I'm talking about, football. What makes it different is it's the only sport where you really can put your hands on another person and move that guy around, And Georgia is supposed to do that, even if it's not working at quarterback with Mathis, and even if, they got some, fits and starts on the outside with some of their receivers kind of growing into new roles. Georgia is supposed to be able to line up, and as soon as the ball snapped, the line of scrimmage is about 4 or 5 yards downfield against Arkansas. That's what it's supposed to be. So I'll give Arkansas credit, man. They played salty the other day, and I think that, when Chavis came in, I didn't know how much of his fastball he had left. Arkansas's got a good one now with Barry Odom. I mean, he's head coaching material in the SEC and actually had some success doing that. But they played a little salty over there. But the big story, you can't get away from it. If Georgia plays like that in the first half, it's not because of Arkansas's defense. It's because they're not making plays. They're not executing on their own side.
So where does Georgia go from here at quarterback? Do you go back and start Bennett? Do you bring Mathis back? Or does JT Daniels get cleared finally?
Well, after Saturday, if you tell me the group of candidates is only 2, then it has to be Stetson Bennett. If JT Daniels finally gets in, there's a difference between being cleared for contact, being cleared for practice, being cleared so that you're not wearing the green jersey, and being cleared to play in a game. When you put on pads and there's an opponent, that's always the dividing line for me. We see kids all the time. They'll post videos during the summer coming back from an injury, and everybody, oh my gosh, did you see him cutting? Did you see him sprinting? I'm like, he's wearing shorts and he's out on a track somewhere. He's supposed to look good. Show me when the guy gets pads on and there's an opponent. and that's what really matters. And so if JT Daniels can get cleared for that, he's the best quarterback in the program right now. He would be the starter, but you can't go back to DeJuan Mathis, not against a team like Auburn. Again, Kevin Steele, I mean, that's playing right into what he loves, a young or inexperienced quarterback, and Mathis is both of those. Stetson Bennett is not an SEC starting caliber quarterback. He's not even close to it, but he made things happen the other day, so God bless him.
Talking college football, Chuck Oliver, 680 in the Fan in Atlanta, the Chuck Oliver Show across the country. Chuck, looking at the other games in the SEC, I think the biggest standout has to be Mississippi State, KJ Costello, Mike Leach going down to Baton Rouge and getting that win. Was that more about Mississippi State and the offense that Mike Leach has established, or all the players that Ed Ogeron, including Joe Brady, including Dave Aranda, and all the team that they lost from last year's national championship squad?
Well, that's clearly part of it. And then once, you got back for June 1st, which was, all right, now we're going to be prepping for this season, it didn't end there. You had multiple players, including maybe the best receiver in America, opt out. You had other guys that were saying they were opting out, but I think when Pelini showed up, and it's a different defense, and maybe I'm going to lose my starting spot to a true freshman like Rick, so maybe I'll do something else, and I'll call it opting out. But you're right, LSU lost all that talent. We all know that. Well, okay, so what? Mississippi State had 11 starters returning. They had 11 starters returning from a team that finished with a losing record and got its head coach fired. So, starters returning? I'd rather have 3 coming back from 15-0 and the greatest offense in history. I'll give Mississippi State a lot of credit. They found guys to catch the football over their 25 practices, and I think they actually had 21 or 22 of them. Their receivers have been along for the ride for about the past 3 or 4 years, even when Dak was still there. And that was not the case on Saturday, especially Kylan Hill. I don't know that there's a player in college football, especially the SEC, who's going to do more to complete his NFL resume this year than Kylan Hill. He was a battering ram the past 2 years, and that was kind of how he was looked at. Now after one game, he's a 3-down NFL back. I thought it was fantastic.
Stepping outside of the SEC, Chuck, OU loses to Kansas State at home, 38-35. Spencer Rattler throws 3 interceptions in this football game. I know former 5-star quarterback, former number 1 dual-threaded player in all of high school. Just kind of curious to see another Lincoln Riley fourth quarter collapse and just kind of what OU Sooner fans are thinking about that game.
Really bad tackling and sort of a casual approach to defense, and that is sort of how it is for some programs in that conference. And it's not like, the coaches don't want to play defense, but some of the style of play and how you recruit and what you make your priorities, et cetera. So we all know how that works, and that was the story the other day. Spencer Rattler is going to be fantastic. I'll give Kleiman and Kansas State credit as the game went on. They kept giving him, everything's going to be an unscouted look pretty much for a kid who's, making his second start, third start, et cetera. And as the game went on, there were some more mistakes that started to pile up. But Spencer Rattler's not going to be the problem. That kid is really, really talented. But again, all the credit in the world for Kansas State, because that was on the road, and they basically owned the second half and especially the fourth quarter.
And did it with 23 players missing, barely enough to even make a roster to make the trip, Chuck.
You know what? And I'm glad you brought up, players missing. Virginia Tech, what they were able to get done.
Yeah.
And I think it was a little bit out of desperation, honestly. And I'm just giving you an opinion. I've texted some buddies up in Blacksburg, and if not for the way the beginning of the season had gone for Virginia Tech as far as a postponement and a cancellation and et cetera, I don't know if Virginia Tech actually would have taken, if they already had a game or two under their belt, if they weren't looking at, well, dang, it's going to be 3 straight weeks that we have to push off our games, I don't know that Virginia Tech would have played. They did the same thing. They were losing, 23 players, 4 coaches, their DC, tremendous job by the Hokies.
Yeah, a couple of games like that. All right, let's circle back to the SEC. I think one of the marquee games this week is Texas A&M and Alabama. A&M struggled for quite a bit of the ball game with Vanderbilt on Saturday. Alabama won in a game they were never really threatened, but maybe was closer than you thought against Missouri. How do you see that marquee matchup in the league this week?
Texas A&M is probably going to be in trouble, and I don't know what's going to happen from week 1 to week 2, but, we also didn't know what was going to happen in the debut week for the SEC. There are so many different scenarios about, well, we had 19 practices, well, we got all 25, and we're missing X number of players, and we've been missing 5 times that. So, I mean, we all know the different scenarios that could bite a team. Well, all of that was facing Alabama as well for the past, 3 months. And Alabama figured it out. Alabama made it work. Now, they're a squad. It's like a monopoly board. They got more hotels than everybody. So the longer the game goes, the more trips are on the board, the more it's going to kind of tilt in Alabama's favor because they're just so much, more talented than everybody. And that was some of what happened the other day. But I think that'll be on full display Saturday, the national game against Texas A&M. Texas A&M didn't figure it out. They came out. It was fits and starts. It was inconsistency. It was their basically fourth-year starter at quarterback, not consistently making plays. And Alabama showed up in Como and did it from the outset. It wasn't easy on anybody. Even if you have a talented roster, it's not easy. And Alabama looked like Alabama. That's about the best compliment I can give them in week one.
Two more questions before we let you go, Chuck. We'll start with the Auburn-Georgia game this week, and I know that you were talking about, well, they better figure it out when they face Kevin Steele and company. Georgia, 8-point favorites in this one. This game will be played in Athens. Chuck, just kind of your overall thoughts on what the mentality should be for this Auburn-Georgia matchup this weekend.
Auburn's offensive line is awful, and anybody who can really get after you up front. And Kentucky did an okay job of that. I mean, Auburn hit some big plays and, then some turnovers. But Auburn's offensive line is very not good. And anybody with some Sunday guys up front, their front seven really, they're going to cause big problems for Auburn, certainly early in the season. And I didn't see anything on Saturday. I mean, Auburn couldn't move the ball consistently at all on the ground against Kentucky. And Bo Nix, just, sheer talent and the fact that Seth Williams is about 6'8", they were able to kind of make the passing game work. But I think Auburn, that should be the story on Saturday is Auburn's offensive line and how, if they are able to, how well that they can kind of move Georgia.
And they lose J.B. Grimes in the offseason. I think Jack Bicknell is the guy that's taken over at that.
Yep.
Other notable SEC game this weekend, another top 15 matchup, Texas A&M, Alabama. Aggies barely got away with beating Vanderbilt this weekend, Chuck. Like, what should we expect from Jimbo Fisher going up against his former boss and Nick Saban? No assistant coach has ever beaten Nick Saban, and I'm thinking that's probably going to stay true this weekend.
Yeah, Kellen Mond is actually probably going to have to do a little bit more, and that's not what Jimbo wanted. That's the reason he moved Nia Smith to running back, and they liked what they got in Stiller there. But I mean, he's the best player on that offense. With Austin sitting out the season, he's the best player on that team probably, and so keep the ball in his hands. And they've used him as a plow horse before. There was a game last year. I think A&M had like 75 snaps, and between runs and pass attempts, Kellen had like 58 plays with the ball in his hands. I know Jimbo doesn't want that, but against Alabama, your only shot is to have the ball in the hands of your best player, and that's him. So it's going to be a tall order.
Chuck Oliver, host at 680 The Fan, also host of the Chuck Oliver Show across the country. Chuck, we really appreciate your time this morning. Enjoy the top 10 matchup this weekend with Auburn and Georgia.
Yeah, appreciate y'all having me on. Ask anytime.